So it's Zayin Amud Aleph, and the problem with this Gemara is when you get to the end of it, it doesn't really fully line up with the beginning of it, and Sharon already pointed out. So the Brisa had said, or the Mishnah had said, on the very top of the page, that the following things don't have a shear, including Peah, Bikurim, and Ra'ayon, right? Which we're going to have a discussion what Ra'ayon is. The two choices, the two candidates are going to be Korban Riyah, the Olas Riyah, or the amount of times that you can actually come to the Beis Mikdash. You're actually appearing in the Beis Mikdash. Gemilas Chasadim Talmud Torah. And Rav Yochanan comes along and says on Zayin Amud Aleph, the second line, Rav Yochanan Gesvurim Ana Lomar Harayon Ein Lo Shir Lamala V'Yesh Lo Shir Lamata. We thought that there was a minimal amount in whatever Rayon is. We thought there was no maximal amount, but there was a minimum amount. Until Rabbi Shaya, the son of Rabbi, came along to say that Rayon has no Torah level shear, minimal or maximum, not above and not below. Okay, but the Chachamim came along and said that this looks like Korban Riyah is 1 kesef. The Chagiga is 2 kesef, which we had a discussion earlier on in the Masechet. Why the difference between the two? This last line, Rabbi Rabbi is obviously interpreting the word Rayon as Korban Riyah. Okay, so when the Gemara is going to try to interpret what it actually means, you'll have to kind of maybe forget about this line, or that's the line that doesn't make sense. Excuse me. Now, Ma Rayon, what is Rayon that we say there's no shear? So Rabbi Yochanan says Riyat Panim Bazara. Rabbi Yochanan says it means you're actually going into the Beis Hamikdash. There is no minimal or maximum. And Reish Lakish says Riyat Panim Bakarban. This is coming in and bringing a carbon. So there's no minimal or maximal amount of times that you have to bring the carbon, or there's no maximal times really. And according to Reish Lakish. Now, what would this machlokas be? Obviously, is it about all the time, every day, or is it about the first day of Yantiv? So the Gemara, this is the part we had done last time. So Be'ikar Regal, first approach of the Gemara is Be'ikar Regal Kuli Amalo Pligi Driyas Panim Bekarban. On the first day, Ikar Regal means the first day of the Yantiv. So that's the actual day that everybody would try to bring their carbon. So everybody agrees that Riyah means Korban Riyah. Ki Pligi B'Shaimos Regal. So we're talking about the machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan to interpret what this is referring to, whether it means carbon or you're actually going into it, refers to the rest of the days of Yantif, which means all the other days of Pesach and Sukkot and so forth, and would actually for Shavuot would also refer to the following week. Kol hecha de asa v'asei. So whether you have to bring a carbon or not, that's going to be machlokas. Right. The first day everybody says to go up here in the Beis Hamikdash you got to come with a carbon. The rest of the days of the Yantiv, do you have to come with a carbon or not? Now, and on that the Gemara says, Kol if you happen to come and bring a carbon the rest of the days of Yantiv, everybody agrees, you can bring it, they'll take it from you. Ki pligi the asiv below icy. The machlokas between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish is interpreting what the word Riyah is about the rest of the days of Yantiv, where you came to the Beis Hamikdash without bringing a carbon. Where it's the Rav Yochanan Sava Riyas Panim Bazara. Rav Yochanan says when you come the rest of the days of Yantiv, it means you're coming. Every time you come, you don't have to bring another carbon. Reish Lakish Amar Riyas Panim Carbon. Whenever Reish Lakish says no, you actually have to bring a carbon. Every time you come in, asi is to go in. Tzarech lasuya you have to bring.
It can be very expensive that way, according to Reish Lakish.
Make it count. Correct. It's like saying, if you go into a museum, if you don't get stamped on the way out, you have to pay another admission on the way back.
Right. Or it's only good for today.
Right.
But according to
or it's only good for today. Correct.
According to Reish Lakish, when you're going to pilgrimage festival, you're going up, you have to bring a lot of korbanos with you.
Yeah, or buy them. Correct.
Or buy them.
Bring a lot of cash. Yes, correct. Right. It's correct.
It's not.
For us, it's hard to imagine. Think of it as paying membership dues, buying tickets for the holidays or something. I don't know. For us, there were big expenses also. For us, you want to know something? When it comes Yantiv, you're spending a lot of money on meat too. You're probably not getting as much meat for your money as they got then. Okay. So the bottom line was, yes, according to Reish Lakish, it means that this can be very substantial amount if you come every day to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, great. Okay, that's the price of doing business in the Beis Hamikdash.
And once you're going up to Yerushalayim, you're obviously not going to go there just for the first day. You're going to go there for every day.
Great. Okay, so think of it every day, going to every day bringing a carbon.
Or just hanging around Yerushalayim, some other part.
Can you bring birds?
First day and the last day.
So can you bring birds? I'm not sure. Can you bring birds for Shalmei Chagiga? This is about the carbon. This is about the Olas Riyah. The Olas Riyah. The Olas Riyah.
It has to be worth 100. Everybody agree with that or
Right.
not? Everybody agrees it has to be worth at least 100.
One mana.
Well, but I don't know how much that is.
Right.
That a lot or a little?
I don't think so. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. You know what? We'll see, because the Gemara is going to talk about it in a couple of lines. I think the answer is no. Okay, let's wait off. Okay.
Okay.
So the Gemara has a bunch of questions on this premise that you either have to bring a carbon or not bring a carbon. According to Rabbi Yochanan, can you come without a carbon? Yes. So the first question is Eisvei Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan v'lo yehu fonai rekam. It says you shall not appear empty-handed. So how can you, Rabbi Yochanan, say you can come during the rest of the days of Yontif without bringing a carbon? So Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan answers Bikar Regel. I'm talking about the first day of Yontif. You can't v'lo yehu fonai rekam.
Right.
In other words, it's no question. The first day of Yontif, everybody agrees you have to bring a carbon with you.
That particular pasuk refers only to Be'ikar Regel.
Right.
According to Rabbi Yochanan. Which is not that clear. You could read it either way. It's more logical to assume Rabbi Yochanan means the first time you come to the Beis Mikdash, right, you have to bring a carbon. But you could interpret it that every time v'lo yeru fonai rekam.
Yeah.
Right? You come, you keep coming, you keep showing up. The price of admission is coming with an animal.
Rabbi Yochanan sounds good, because when Hashem says come 3 times a year, he means come once. You don't have to come every day. Once you come, you have to come.
Right. Correct. Okay, so now we have a second question, which the end of the question is going to be very similar to this last what we just read, and the answer is going to be very similar. That is Beikar Regel. So Eisvei. V'lo yeru fonai rekam. There's a very long brisa that is brought down with different drushes back and forth. V'lo yeru fonai rekam. So the Gemara says, tries to interpret it. It's not dealing with our issue yet. It's dealing with halachas that relate to bringing karbanos. Bezvach mata omer. This is where the birds come up. Bezvach mata omer. This means that bringing zvachim are 4-legged animals. Bezvachim o eno ela ba'ofos uminachos. Or maybe it means when you could bring birds, or you can even bring a meal offering. Vidinhu, and the Gemara says, how could you say this? Dinhu means it's like a kal v'chomer, so to speak. You can't say it. Nemra chagiga lehedjot, v'nemra ria legavoha. It talks about that you're bringing 2 karbanos. One is a karban chagiga, which you eat, that's for you, and then you bring olas ria for God. Ma chagiga hamur lehedjot zvachim. The carbon that you bring for yourself to eat has to be zvachim, has to be 4-legged animals. Af ria hamur legavoha zvachim. Okay, so therefore you cannot bring an olas riyah from birds. It has to be from zvachim. Zvachim means some cows or sheep, right, or goats. So it has to. That's what the animal has to be. The same way that the animal you bring to eat has to serve you as food, which is going to be the 4-legged animal. So too, when you bring to God, it can't be ophos, and it can't be birds, and it can't be menachos. That's the initial drash. And then it goes on. Umahin zvachim. What is zvachim? So umahin. I'm sorry. What is?
Yeah, that's the way it is here. Mahin zvachim dash olos.
Right. Umahin zvachim. Well, what is zvachim that we're talking about? Olos. That is completely burned up. Atomer olos. Oeinu el shlamim. Maybe when you bring the carbon to God, and it says v'lo yiru fonai rekam, you cannot come empty-handed. Appear maybe means you can't appear, and you're going to bring a shlamim. You're going to eat it. So the Gemara says v'dinhu. How could you say this? Nemra chagiga lehedjot and nemra ria legavoha. It talks about bringing 2 karbanos, a carbon chagiga and a carbon ria. The carbon shalmei chagiga that you're going to eat. So ma chagiga hamur lehedjot b'roilo. That you bring the carbon chagiga as a shlamim, which you're going to eat because it's your carbon. Af ria, the ria which is you're bringing to God, v'lo yera ufonai rekam. You shall not appear before me empty-handed, bring me the carbon, says God. That's for God. What do you mean baroilo? That you're not going to bring something that human beings eat. You're going to burn the carbon completely up. So the second part of the drash, once again, it's not really affecting us directly, is the first one we said, how do I know that I have to bring zvachim? Maybe I can bring birds and menachos. It says, no, we compare the two. The same way that I have to bring a carbon to eat, so too, God gets a carbon of zvachim. And what about, now, how do I know that I'm bringing a carbon that's completely burned up for God? Maybe it's also, I'm going to eat the carbon olasriya. And the Gemara says, no. Now the comparison is what I bring for my shalmei chagiga is for me to eat. What I'm bringing for God is for God to eat, which means it's burned on the altar, right?
So zvachim is just a general.
Zvachim is a general term for big animals. Okay.
Because it says. Okay, so it said mine zvachim.
So what are the zvachim that you're bringing for the riyah? We call it olas riyah. So when we call it olas riyah, it's clear that it's burnt up. But the pasuk says what? V'lo yera'u fonai rekam.
Right.
Now, which means you got to bring something. What do you got to bring? It's called the riyah because yera'u fonai rekam.
Right.
But we don't know what kind of sacrifice it is.
It is, right.
Is it burnt or is it mostly eaten?
Well, we know that it's burnt.
We only know that it's burned once we conclude it's an olah. But this is where the Gemara says, how do you know that it is how do you know the sacrifice you're bringing to gain entrance into the Beis Hamikdash, which is called Re'iyah? The appearance is an Olah. Maybe you bring it, you get to eat it.
But you wouldn't think that because the Chagiga, you do eat. So you don't need to eat twice.
Sure you could. Of course you could. Have plenty of people eat with you. So the Gemara gives a better response. The Gemara's response is the animal, the sacrifice you're bringing is going to be determined based upon the reason for it. When I bring a chagiga, which is meat chogeg, to celebrate, I understand, for me to celebrate, meat and potatoes, right? I got to eat it. When I'm bringing it to gain entrance, that God should see it, I should appear before God. Who is the sacrifice for? Kilo, it's for God.
Right.
So what do you mean God's going to eat the sacrifice? God doesn't eat like I eat. So what's God's sacrifice? When it's burnt up completely. Ergo, my sacrifice is a shlamim, right? It's chagiga. I'm going to eat it. The sacrifice for God is going to be olah. So that's the piece the Gemara says. I would have thought maybe, how do I know that this is an olah? Maybe it's eaten. The answer is the same way my sacrifice makes sense for me to eat. The same way the sacrifice for God makes sense for God for it to be burned up to God.
Do we agree?
Kaviyachol.
Do we agree so far that doesn't necessarily mean it should have to be a four-leg? Because Hashem could be happy with a bird for it. If I'm going to feed me and my family, I can't have a bird.
Correct.
Right?
Okay,
but Hashem could say, because we know there are ofot and for that matter, mincha.
Correct. But then the first part of the brisa, which took a different tack, and it's almost self-contradictory. The first part of the brisa says the same way that my sacrifice has got to be a zvachim, four-legged animal, so God's sacrifice has got to be a four-legged animal. In other words, the type of animal is equated because they're two korbanos.
Right.
What we do with the animal, whether we consume, whether we eat it or whether we burn it, depends on who it's meant to serve. What's the purpose of it? Mm-hmm. And v'chein b'din, and the Gemara says, and I'll prove it to you. It's like this shows what it is. Shlo yeh shulchan chamaglei, v'shulchan rab chorekam, so that your table shouldn't be full. You'll be eating, and God's table will be empty. What do you mean God's table will be empty? What's God's table? The altar, the mizbeach. In other words, I'm sorry?
Is this a pasuk? Shelo yehei shulchan?
No, it's logic. It's saying logical. In other words, that the same way that the sacrifice to me I'm going to eat because that's the purpose, the sacrifice for God is going to be for Him. What does that mean?
That means olah.
It means olah. What do you mean olah? The same way I have meat on my table that's korban chagiga and I'm going to eat, I put the sacrifice of the riyah on God's table, which is the Mizbeach, right? You've heard this. Our Shulchan is like the Mizbeach. This is one of the connections, which means what? It's going to be burnt up. Because it makes no sense that I'm going to fress, and as if to say, Kaviyachol, God's not going to fress.
So if there is this equivalent between Chagiga and Olas Reya on the first day, what about on all the other days?
So we don't know what this is yet referring to. Right. Correct.
That's the next step, obviously.
Well, it's the step that the Gemara does not make. But right now the Gemara brings this whole thing because what do you see from this proof? What does this whole brisa try to say?
That it's an olah, and it should be a zvachim.
Right. But it also says that the interpretation of the pasuk "V'lo yera'u fanai rekam" is what?
It is a korban.
It's a korban.
Yeah, for
right,
sure.
so this is a much longer version of the previous question that we had, which quoted just simply, if you go back to the previous Amud where the question was Eisvei Rish Lakish Rav Yochanan V'lo Yeru Fanei Rekam. This is the same thing, only just simply adds a longer brisa, a different kind of source, which goes on for a dozen lines and comes up to the same conclusion that V'lo Yeru Fanei Rekam is not you show up, but you show up and you feed God.
Right.
But it's the same kind of upshlag again.
Exactly. And the Gemara answers Amalei Bikar Aregel.
Exactly.
Okay. Same thing. It's a carbon copy or an expanded version of the first question.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that question 1 and 2 are simply questions against Rav Yochanan, who says you can show up without a carbon, and his response is, you can show up without a carbon on any other day. The first day everybody agrees, V'lo Yeru Fanei Rekam means you got to bring a carbon.
Do you bring shlamim every day?
The Shalmei Chagiga?
Shalmei Chagiga.
No, I don't think so. No.
Only on the first day.
Only on the first day. You can bring Shalmei Simcha anytime you want. There are 3 karbanos. They're all us just just to warn you, when we get to the next Mishnah is a very confusing Mishnah because each line talks about something else, and it doesn't say exactly what it is. So there are 3 karbanos. Olas Ria, which is burned, it's an appearance sacrifice. There's a Chagiga, which is a celebratory sacrifice, and then there's Shalmei Simcha, which are additional sacrifices to make more festivity, because we all know that guys like to eat meat.
Well,
however, if you don't necessarily have to bring a special Shalmei Chagiga, if you have other sacrifices, right, and that's what the Gemara is going to talk about. The next Mishnah will talk about. What if you have other sacrifices you're bringing that may qualify as part of a Shalmei Chagiga, Shalmei Simcha, excuse me. So the Olas Riyah has to be a sacrifice. The Shalmei Chagiga has to be a sacrifice. Right. The Shalmei Simcha are additional things to make just more festivities. Like saying instead of having 1 course, you have a 7-course meal, right?
But you hear where I'm going here. That Braita made a very clear comparison between Chagiga and Olas Riyah. And one sounds like it's very tied in with the other.
Okay.
So if you have to give a Chagiga on day 2, then
you don't. I don't think you do. Okay, I don't think anyone says you do.
But the second brisa,
only the Olas Riyah, the only one is the Olas Riyah, because it says V'lo Yeru Fanei Rekam. You can't come in empty-handed. So either that refers to the first day or all the days.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the second brite I find did add something, because the first one, Lo Yeru Fanei, doesn't tell you what it is altogether, and the second one says no, you have to bring a carbon, 2 carbonas. So that really does. It doesn't change the answer, but it still really does make it clear.
It makes it
clear.
I agree.
You wouldn't have known what it was, right?
Yep, true. Okay, question 3. Similar, this one's a little different, but the same kind of tact, and the response is going to be the same thing. Eisvei Rav Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, and this is a different brisa. I'm sorry, Eisvei. Rav Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Shalosh v'galam b'shana. Nistav Yisrael lalos b'regel. There were 3 pilgrimage festivals the Jews had to go up by foot or to the Beis Hamikdash. Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, v'Chag HaSukkos. V'ein nirin chatzayin. They can't come partially. Now, the Gemara is going to ask, after all is finished, the Gemara is going to ask, what does this mean you can't come up half? You can't come up like half. Who does this exclude? And who is included? What does this mean? You can't divide up your menfolk and say, okay, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, you go up today, and Yisachar, Zvulun, Gad v'Asher goes up tomorrow, or it refers to something else the Gemara will conclude. So I'm not going to go into it now because the Gemara is going to deal with it after we clean up this whole long piece. Okay. So one is you can't go up Chatzayin, which looks like half. Mishum Shnemar Kol Zechurcha means everybody's got to go. The ain, and here's the key line, the ain niran rikanim, they can't appear empty-handed. Mishum shenemar v'lo yeru fanei rekam. Okay, once again, what's the question? It's a takeoff on the same question we've had. It says v'lo yeru fanei rekam, which means you can't come without bringing a sacrifice. which is against Rabbi Yochanan, who says the other days of the festival you can. What's Rabbi Yochanan's answer going to be? Same thing. Amalei, Bikar Regel. Okay, so question 1, 2, 3 was a 1, 2, 2 was the same thing, only in different kind of bit of camouflage. The same thing. Now, here comes the real question that's going to explode everything. Eisvei Rav Yochanan or Reish Lakish. This next question is not Reish Lakish, Rav Yochanan. This is Reish Lakish, is Rav Yochanan's payback time.
Right.
He asked a question against Reish Lakish. According to Reish Lakish, you have to come with a korban.
Right.
Rav Yochanan says you don't. Okay? So it says as follows. So the pasuk says Yeroi and looks like Yira. Yeroi, Yira. So I see, but I have to appear, or maybe it's different places where it uses the term. So Mani Bechinam, Afatem Bechinam. So in other words, the same way that because it compares appearing to be seen, right? So the same way that I appear is the same way that I am seen, which means the same way God sees, the same way that I appear. Which means the drash is, and once again, it's an anthropomorphic drash. The same way that I don't got to bring anything, says God, you don't got to bring anything. Okay. So this is Reish Lakish's approach. This is Rabbi Yochanan's approach, who says there are days that you can come without anything, against Reish Lakish, who says you always have to come. You see from this brayso. However, we understand it that there is a comparison that we can come empty-handed the same way God comes empty-handed. The same way God doesn't bring a korban, we don't got to bring a korban. Therefore,
it says Yerayah, be seen.
Correct, be seen, and it looks like be seen. And this drush, by the way, these psukim are used in different ways. We had it earlier that a blind person can't bring to the base of Mikdash, even blind in one eye. Right. So the same way God sees, I have to be seen. And the same way God sees complete vision, God doesn't have two eyes, I have to see complete vision. So this short line here, believe it or not, blows up the approach we gave, because you see black on white that there is a time where you don't have to bring a korban. Mani bechinam afatem bechinam. So you cannot ever argue that you always must come with a korban, even right. It looks like you can come for free, come with nothing.
Other than the first day.
Right.
Yeah.
So
you have to come. You have no choice.
Correct. You have to come.
So God doesn't have to come.
God is there.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
He's there. But no, he doesn't put anything into the pot.
So what do you mean he doesn't have to bring a korban?
Means God doesn't have to bring a korban. So
you have to come. You have to bring a korban.
No. What it means is I can come and bring. I have to bring a korban, but if I don't have a korban, I can still enter.
Because I will be seen.
In other words, it means as if to say, like, there are museums. You have an entrance fee. The museum, you have a free day. And all say donations, right? Your entrance, you make a donation to get an entrance. How much you have to put in, you decide. But what if you put nothing in? I don't know. I'm not sure if you have to put something in or nothing. Let's assume you can get in without anything, and they just have a donation box. Yeah. So it'd be nice you put in. If you put in, you'd be helping the museum. But if you don't have, you can still get in. So the same thing. You have a mitzvah to bring a korban riyah, but if you don't, you're a soup kitchen person. You can still go to Beis Mikdash and enter.
Do you have an option to be there or not to be there?
No, you're supposed to be there if you can go.
So that's what it breaks down.
But you have to go every day?
No, you have to go for the three times. Three times,
I'm saying you don't have to go every day.
Right. So let's see because now the Gemara turns the whole thing around. Ella, okay, so whatever you learned until now, kind of do brain wipe, not really brain wipe, but just see it twisted around. Kol hecha da'asiv lo aisi. And wherever you come and do not bring a korban, the kuliyam lo pligi di ayil umitchaze v'nafik. That everybody says you can go in, ayil umitchaze be seen, v'nafik can go out. So everybody agrees if you don't have a korban, you can actually go in. There is no entrance fee to get in the Beis Mikdash. Not saying whether you should bring a korban, shouldn't bring a korban. If you don't have a korban, you're still available and permissible to go into the Beis Mikdash, according to everybody. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Key pligi, the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish is the asivi aisi. So when you actually bring a korban, and in other words, and you've already brought a korban, the asivi aisi, Rabbi Yochanan the Amar Rias Panim Bazara. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it says that when you come in, you can come in this. The rayon means you're there. Rias panim hudein lashir Her carbon yeshlo shir. If you brought one carbon according to Rabbi Yochanan, you brought the carbon riyah once, that's it.
Right.
You've done it. You can't. It's like saying you can't take 2 lulavim.
Right.
You can't put on different pairs of tefillin. You can't make, I don't know, different amotzis. Once you made a motzi, that's it. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, when there is a shear for bringing the carbon, when it says there's no shear, what does it mean? There's no shear for you going to the Beis Hamikdash. If you come without a carbon, you can come. If once you brought a carbon, that's it. Okay, so notice everybody agrees you can come without a carbon. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you can come multiple times. For Rav Reish Lakish Omar, Riyas panim b'karban. That Rabbi Reish Lakish says you don't have to bring a carbon, but if you want, you can bring another carbon multiple times. They feel a carbon nami ein lo shir. So according to Machlokas, is not about whether you have to bring a carbon, whether you may bring additional carbonos for the olas riyah.
Wow.
Okay, you're worried about the cost of doing business in Beis Hamikdash. Can you, if you bring another carbon, is this considered another facet of the mitzvah, or not? Sometimes there are certain mitzvahs we can do multiple times, and we can't. Lulav and esrog, that's done once. Sukkah, you go in, you eat, you go out, you go back in. Right? Learning Torah, you can learn Torah multiple times during the day. Right? And on the other hand, there are certain other mitzvahs that you do once. So that's the machlokas. So again, everybody says you can come in without a carbon. At least once you've brought it once.
Sure.
Right? The other days, you don't have to bring a carbon. The question is, can I bring a carbon? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's a one-shot deal. And according to Reish Lakish, it's as many times as I want. So this is what the machlokas between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish is. Is Rayon about Riyat Panim Ba'azara or Riyat Panim Ba'karban? Right. And now let's try to see what goes back into the brisa where it makes sense about shir and not shir.
The reason why this makes sense is just think about it from a historical context. They knew what was going on in Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
They knew that people came first day with a korban, and afterwards, some people probably came with a korban, some people came without a korban. So they knew that you didn't have to come every single day with a korban.
The question is, when you brought an additional korban, is that going to be an olas riyah?
Correct.
Or to be something else? It could be in the dava.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Or even the Chagiga.
But they knew the historical fact, what happened.
Right. What he's saying is, though, Reish Lakish says, if I've decided to bring an animal and I want it entirely burned, and I want to do this for 6-7 days, I don't want any part of it, I can say to the Kohen, bring this as a riyah. I mean, if you went by his opinion,
I bring
it as a riyah. Please bring it as an olah, right?
Correct. And
burn it up.
And put it on my account as an olas riyah. Right? I've done the mitzvah twice, 3 times, 4 times.
Why would he think that you shouldn't do it more? You can't do it more than once.
In fact, Rabbi Yochanan says you can't do it more than once.
I know, but why?
Because once you did it, you did it. It's an appearance sacrifice.
But why is he picking on this thing that's only once?
Because the Torah says you can't enter empty-handed. Once I've therefore fulfilled my obligation, not empty-handed, because I brought a carbon, I'm done it.
Yeah, but you can give.
So therefore, it's nonsensical.
So it's not. Wait a minute. If you want to give tzedakah $100, you give tzedakah.
Because that's helping.
Now give $1,000. Now give another $1,000.
Yeah, but you know what? But here we go. So I bench. I ate.
I want to pray for 5 minutes. I pray for 2 hours.
So the answer is yes. You can pray for 2 hours, but you can only say the Shemona Esrei once. In other words, you ate the food, and you bench. You said Berachas Hamazon. You say, well, I like the food so much. I had so much food. I want to bench a second. Keep benching. The same food. And the answer is it doesn't work.
It's closer to praying than to food.
Okay.
You go to shul. Some guys daven for 3 hours. Some guys daven for 15 minutes.
But the guy who's davening for 3 hours is saying the same thing. The guy who's davening for 5 minutes.
He's putting more into it. So he's putting more into it.
So therefore, bring a bigger carbon. So the answer is yes. If you want to put more into it, bring a fatter cow.
No, but only one.
A prize cow.
But only one.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, good analogy.
There's only one afikomen at the Seder. Maybe not. Okay. But the afikomen. The reason I say that because the afikomen is representative of the carbon Pesach.
Yeah.
Right, which is by the way a different kind of sacrifice. I'm just giving you an example. You can't say I want to bring multiple carbon Pesach.
You say lulav. You can't bench lulav 7 times in a day.
One Seder. Technically, right?
Yeah, but maybe I want to have, but maybe on the base mikdash I want to go back and bring another carbon pesach. You never heard of that? So I'm really religious. I'm so Jewish. I want to bring carbon pesach, eat it, and then go back up on the mount and bring another one. Keep eating carbon pesach all night. And the answer is you can keep eating meat all night. You can bring different carbonos, but you can't bring a carbon pesach. So that's the question. No, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy that there's people bringing sacrifices. Is it going to be all asriya, or will it be something else? You can bring as many sacrifices as you want. Right?
All asriya just once.
All asriya is only once, correct.
Hey.
So, you know what, let's finish up the two dots, then we'll see how it plugs in, because I don't want to get caught in the middle there. Okay, so therefore, what does this mean? According to, who says you can bring multiple sacrifices? Reish Lakish says you can bring multiple carbon riyas.
Right.
Now, Asis, the Gemara has a couple of side questions on this. This, by the way, is the conclusion of the Gemara, but the Gemara likes to ask questions. Esvei, Hukar Raglacha mi beis reyacha. There's a pasuk in Mishlei that which the Gemara is going to interpret here is referring to the Beis Hamikdash. It looks like it's really not about that in Mishlei. Mishlei is talking about interpersonal relationships. Hukar Raglacha, your feet should be yakar, rare or special, mi beis reyacha, from the house of your friend. Mishlei probably, I don't know the pasuk exactly, it looks like it's talking about you shouldn't kind of owe favors to people or be on your own. This is a Mishlei kind of thing. But the drush here of this pasuk is that your feet you shouldn't be bringing too many korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it means. Hukar raglecha. Your feet should be yakar is expensive or dear. Your feet should be dear going to bring into the Beis Hamikdash, being Beis Reyacha. The Gemara says in darshaning this, it says Laman achayv re'ai, okay, so that we are the friends of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Laman achayv, the friend Shlomo Kavach, Laman achayv Davan Shalom Bach.
I know.
So we're talking about that the Jewish people are considered the re'echa of Hashem.
But they shouldn't come too often.
So therefore, Beis Re'echa is referring to the house of where the friends of God go. Not that God is our friend, of course, but the friends of God. Okay.
If he's our parent, he could be our
right?
friend.
What were the Quakers called? What were the the Friends Society?
Right. Society of Friends.
Society of Friends. Okay. So at any rate, so this drush seems to say, if you accept the drush, it's a little far-fetched in the pasuk, that your feet shouldn't run to go to base. Your legs should be found the way from Beis Re'echa, which means don't bring a lot of korbanos.
Isn't Beis Re'echa the shul and the base medrash too?
It could, but in the days of the Gemara,
don't go to shul.
No, it means the darshan to mean don't bring a lot of korbanos. Of course, it doesn't make sense. So the Gemara has to give an answer if you listen. So the Gemara says, why? Because first the Gemara says you see from this you can't bring a lot of korbanos. Bring what you got to bring.
So the challenge on Reish Lakish.
So the challenge on Reish Lakish says you can bring multiple different sacrifices for Olas Riyah. This seems to say once you did the mitzvah, God says you got to bring one, and that's it. Don't come back. Don't bring another one. And Reish Lakish says the opposite. So the Gemara's answer is, it depends what kind of karban. The Gemara says, Hasam b'chatos v'ashamos. The karbanos we're talking about not bringing a lot, are karbanos you bring for sins. Don't become a sinner that you must come multiple times.
If you do it on purpose, it's not a chatos.
Correct. So be careful that you don't do sins by accident. That you have to therefore bring a chatas frequently. Don't be a frequent flyer for bringing carbon chatas and carbon asham. That's
there.
Right. That's the drush here. That's the response. In other words, which means if you want to bring other sacrifices, gesund to hate, the more the merrier. Don't be a person who they know is the guy who's always bringing carbon chatas. Because it's not the right thing, right?
And it's not referring to Olas Riyah.
It's not referring to Olas Riyah, and it's not referring to a whole lot of other karbanos. It's referring specifically in this drush, and the Gemara brings now the support for this interpretation. Means when it says don't bring a lot of sacrifices, don't have to make a lot of amends. How do you know? What was the sign the person had to make amends? They brought a karban. Today there is no korbanos. No one knows what you did. No one knows when you make up. Right? You say the Al Chetz on Yom Kippur. No one hears what you're saying. Well, we all say the same thing. But in those days, you didn't know what the korban is for necessarily. But if you're showing up every other week, bringing another korban chatas, it probably doesn't look good. So that's what Mishlei says. The drash of the pasuk, and admittedly, it's very far away from the pshat of the pasuk of Mishlei, is don't make yourself a frequent appearance in the Beis Hamikdash, Beit Re'echa, with bringing korbanos. Okay.
So can you come to the Beis Hamikdash without a korban?
So and therefore, yes, you can. But it's referring specifically coming to bring a korban asham or korban chatas.
Right. So it's not teaching you anything.
It's not teaching you anything. Right. The drash is really telling you don't become a sinner. Right. Be very careful what you do.
So the Cohen would ask the guy who brought the korban, what's it for?
No, it's a korban chatas. It's a different. You have to say, I'm bringing a korban chatas. There were different kinds of sacrifices that were brought. So what it says? What are you bringing there? Right? Not how much is the animal worth, or I'll take this from you. What is the animal for? You say, I'm bringing. This is for bringing korban chatas, right?
Did the coin get different parts depending on what kind of korban it was?
I think so. I forget who was this in the beginning of Masechah Shabbos. I think first couple of dapim about not reading by candlelight on Shabbos. Because Shema Yatzel on there, because you may come to move the candle, right? And we have much larger illumination, and we don't even read by candlelight. Right. So the Gemara says there was once one of the Tanoim, or maybe an Amor, I don't remember, who actually, there were two versions of the story. One is both versions always says, it's okay, I don't have to be worried about this Gzeira, I'll read and nothing will happen. In one version of the story, he almost moved the candle. In the other version of the story, he actually moves the candle, and he says, when the Beis Hamikdash will be built, I will have to bring a korban chatas.
There you go.
So the answer is, we don't have korban chatas. We don't have, it's a whole different story. By the way, I think I told you, I asked the Mechon Mikdash, this is the Temple Institute that looks forward to rebuilding the temple. I said, how is this really going to look? This looks like a big packing house. This looks like a big slaughter. If you think of it, it looks like a slaughter, right? Thousands and thousands of people are bringing korbanos. Whether you bring one olas riyah, everybody's bringing 3 different korbanos: olas riyah, korban chagiga, and shalmei simcha.
The pictures we see didn't look so bad.
It'll smell.
Right, it's A, going to smell, and B, just imagine that there's just blood flying everywhere. I don't know if anyone has ever gone to a slaughterhouse where they shecht animals. It's really not a pretty sight.
No.
So and especially if it's done commercially, but think of it commercially, the big packing house is what the Beis Hamikdash way. So the person said they believe that when the Beis Hamikdash is built, it doesn't have to be outdoors anymore. It's going to be like going to Sobeys. You don't have to see what goes on behind the counter where they're carving up the meat. Right? There's a whole part of Sobeys that no one ever sees, where the slabs of beef come in, the sides of beef come in, and they cut it up into little pieces. Who sees that? Nobody. The only one who sees it is the workers and the mashgiach. Right. You go, what do? You stand online, and you say, I want this roast and that roast, and I want this and I want that. You go through the aisles, it's all set up that way. So they said, we believe with modern types of ventilation and air conditioning, that there'll be like a big building, and people are going to come and bring their korban, right? Do all the stuff there, hand it over to the Kohen, and that's it.
I wonder where the Mizbeach is going to be.
Wherever it is, but they say that's how they understand it. Because I thought I was actually fairly. I don't know how it's going to be, and I still can't imagine it. But at least it makes a little more sense. Absolutely. It's not going to be an open air kind of like a foreign market where they see the animals hanging up, right? So at any rate, be it as it may, so this is the Gemara's interpretation. These are the Chatas and Shamos. Kid Rabbi Levi. Let's go on and finish up this Gemara. Kid Rabbi Levi. The Rabbi Levi, it was the one who asked the pasuk, one pasuk against another one. What's the pasuk? Siv hu karagul chami beis raglecha. One pasuk is the pasuk in Mishlei says that your legs will be rare in the house of God's friends. Uksiv avo beisecha biolos. And in Tehillim, because Samach Vav, it says, I will come to your house with olos. So one says stay away, and one says I'm coming. So Gemara says, so Rabbi Levi says, Lo kasha, he gave the question, he gave the answer. Kan b'chatos v'shamos, kan b'olos u'shlomim. When you're dealing with sin offerings, stay away. When you're dealing with olos and shlomim, come in. Who said that? Rabbi Levi. And there's a brisa that says the same thing. Okay. the Tanya Nami Hachi, Huka Raglu Chami Beis Reyecha, Bechatos Vashamos. It's the same, only it's a Bryce. Rabbi Levi is like an early Amora. Hakos Bechatos Vashamos. Hakos Medaber. At Omer Bechatos Vashamos. So Eino Elabolos Ushlamim. How do you know Til Bechatos Vashamos? Maybe it's all Ushlamim. Kishu Omer Avo Beisecha Biolos Ashalim Lecha Nidorai or Nidre. So the pasuk in Tehillim says, "I'm going to come to your house with olos. I'm going to pay up my nedarim. Harei olos ushlamim amri." So you come. You're coming. Hamani makayim hukar ragul chami beis reyecha. What does it mean? Stay away. Bechatos v'shamos akas medaber. Okay, so we have the Gemara answered it and said Rabbi Levi said the same thing and the Brisa said the same thing. So in the end, this question about staying away is not staying away. It's about staying away from sin and staying away from bringing karma chatas. The end of this Gemara is therefore. Okay. Let's go summarize. So therefore, if a person, anyone can come to the Beis Hamikdash on any day. Once you bought the Olas Riyah, you can come any day without bringing a karban. Right. The question is, may I bring multiple times the same karban Olas Riyah on different days? Right. That's the question. According to Rabbi Yochanan, no. It's one time. Right? When it says what can I do multiple times? I can come multiple times.
Yes. Or bring other cars.
I can appear. It means I appear. I appear multiple times. Yeah. Okay. Reish Lakish says no. I can bring the karban multiple times. Okay, that's the machlokas in the end. Yeah. Now let's go back to the top of the page where this Bryce of the Gemara says was a machlokas. Right, top of Zayin and Aleph. Let's see what fits in, what doesn't fit in, because it doesn't all fit in real nicely, and it doesn't fit in completely. Okay, so the first line of the page is right. The Dvarim Shein Lam Shira Pe'ah V'Abikurim V'Harayon. So what's Rayon mean? So machlokes what the Riyah means. Right. It means it doesn't have a shear. Right. It's either going to be I can come multiple times or I can bring multiple carbons. That's Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Right. I can come multiple times. Rabbi Yochanan, I can bring multiple carbons. There's no shear. Okay. And that makes sense. Now that line fits in. The next line is a little more difficult. I thought that we thought there's no minimal shear until Rabbi Yoshaya said that there is a shear lamat, there is no shear lamatu even, but the Chachamim say the shear is shalma kesef. So this part is following which opinion? When it says this clearly is talking about bringing a carbon. Right. This is not. In other words, this addition of Rav Oshai Rebbe about Ra'ayon is clearly taking the tact that it's referring to a different a carbon, which that really minator there's no minimal amount. But the Chachamim came along to say that the carbon Riyah is a kesef.
That's not the value.
So, but I'm saying, but this line itself is not going to fit into Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Right? This line, all I'm saying is it's an explanation that the Gemara brought in to explain the Mishnah of a Pe'ah V'Abikurim.
Right.
But it stands as an independent piece, right? And it doesn't fit into the very end of the Gemara.
But it does. I mean, according to Rabbi Yochanan, right? He's talking about just the Korban Riyah on the first day.
Oh, so he means for the first day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could
but see, look above, because Amar Rabbi Yochanan Kisvur Manalomar Harayon Ein Lo Shir Lamala V'Yesh Lo Shir Lamata. I said, Rabbi Yochanan says, we thought that when it says Rayon in the Mishnah, it means there's no minimal above and no minimal below. But right.
Rabbi Yoshia
said, but what do I think about when Rabbi Yochanan is talking about here? What is he talking about?
He's
talking about carbon.
Just on the first day.
Yeah, but the Rabbi Yochanan's approach that we now said is referring to the rest of Yantiv,
right, not the first.
And I can't bring there. In other words, I'm capped. So there's an inconsistency in the end of the Gemara with this one line here, the Rabbi Yochanan, which brings Rav Oshaya, which seems to fall apart.
Yes.
The Rishonim all pointed out there's really no good answer. You'd have to say it was added, or it's a different approach, or a different thing. But then he goes back to the next line. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rias Panam Azara. What's Rayon? Rias Panam Azara. Rish Lakish says, Rias Panam Karban. So when the Gemara says that makes sense for what we said now.
Right.
Now, as Rabbi Yochanan says, what it says there's no shear. There's no shear for you how many times you come. When? The rest of the Yantiv. Rish Lakish says there's no maximum share how many karbanos you can bring.
But there is a share. It's only 7 days.
Yeah, but in
According to Rabbi Yochanan.
each of those days, that's the yantif. That's not a share in the carbon. That's a share in the yantif.
No,
But on the yantif itself, you can come multiple times.
But there is a maximum shear.
No, it's a maximum.
No,
It's a maximum share.
Well,
What the
shears that, like,
the
you
ma-
don't
no,
have
no.
much yantiv.
It says because Shalosh Pamim Bashana Yerakos, according to 3 separate pilgrimage festivals, you can go. Whenever the pilgrimage festival is, you can go multiple times or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there
Right.
seem to be 2 kinds of shiurim, right? The main thing we've been talking about is how many times can you come or whatever. But then the first one, which the Rabbanim said, it's like matzah, how much you have to eat to be Makayim.
That's
They're
what-
saying,
that's clearly
they're
covered.
saying the value, clearly there's a shiur
Right.
for the
Minimum.
value of the thing.
And that's correct. And that which we possibly like, but that's what I'm saying. It doesn't fit into Rabbi
Yeah,
Yochanan
yeah.
Shlakish piece
Right.
here exactly.
Right.
Okay, so this goes back to what the Chatzon piece is all about. Remember I
Right.
told you I want to tell you what that is?
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
bringing down these brises, in the third question, the Gemara, which was Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda said, you can't appear v'nirin Chatzayin. You can't appear halfway or half because it's kol zuchurcha.
Right.
So the Gemara doesn't know what this means. You can't. What half can't you do and what half can you do? Who's the half all about? V'nirin Chatzayin. It's a very simple piece. Savar Rav Yosef lemeimar. Rav Yosef thought what it meant to be. Mandis le'asar banim. A person has 10 sons. L'lisku ha'edna chamisha, l'macha chamisha. Don't come for today with 5 sons, and the next day 5. In other words, don't split up your males. All the males have to appear together. That's who said that? Rav Yosef thought that's what the Bryce is telling us, that everybody's got to be there all together, one for all, and all for one.
What would be the Havamina? Why would you not think that?
Leave 4 guys back home to protect
So the
them.
Gemara says, why would I not think that?
Oh.
That's exactly what the Gemara says. Some of the Abaye, Pshita. Right, Pshita.
I agree
Well,
with
of course, in other words, of course you can't do that. Well, Haminaihu Mashvis Lahu Poshim, Haminaihu Mashvis Lazrizim. Which of the 5 do you want to make the sinners that they're waiting a day to go? And which of them you want to make them Zaris, the ones who are running to do it?
Right.
How can you determine that you're going to take half your family up the first day and half the family the second day? Who gets to go? How do you choose this? Everybody wants to be there. So obviously you all got to go together. Okay? So Gemara says El Kral Mai Asa. What's the pasuk coming to tell us? A different thing completely. L'Acherim. The following brisa, which is mentioned in the name of Acherim, the Tanya Acherim Omrim. There are certain people. I'll explain to you before I read it. There are certain people whose profession left with them a terrible odor. Okay, such as the person that picked up the dog excrement. That was his job. Someone has to do it. Okay.
Now everybody has to do it. But then you
correct, right? Whatever it was, that's what he did. And he had
They were smarter in the old days.
correct. All I'm saying, that was his job. Like there's a dog catcher. He was a dog poop collector. So this guy, you can only imagine what he smelled like.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Awful. Now, if he were to come to the base of Mikdash, what would happen? Everybody would run the other way.
You can take a shower first.
So the answer is he couldn't take a shower because first of all they didn't have showers, second of all they didn't have detergents like we have it, and third of all this is what he did every day from 9 to 5 or 7 to 7, and it stuck to him and it stayed with him. That was his job.
But the whole place smelled. The base of Mikdash smelled.
No, I think
No,
it's
it's a different smell. It's a different
What?
smell. It's a different smell. It's a different smell.
It's like an abattoir.
Okay, well.
Right? A Schlachthaus. It's
But
awful.
Schlachthaus is not full of feces.
Wasn't there a miracle that didn't smell?
Correct, it didn't smell.
What is it?
So all I'm saying, the base of
The
Mikdash.
smell was is so
No.
overpowering.
No.
You can't breathe.
Okay, true.
Different kind of smell,
Okay.
Blood,
But
blood is different.
But when
So-
you smell that, you can't.
So first of all,
even cows,
I
you
once
never put
went
the
when I was
dog,
much younger. I once went to a big slaughterhouse with cows, not cows, back in Philadelphia, and I don't recall the smell being bad. I just remember the rivers of blood. Just remember rivers of because there's just like hosing down all the time. The animal schlepped in, yanked up, next down.
We had a big slaughterhouse you guys remember, on St. Clair.
St. Clair, yeah.
For blocks around.
Sure.
You
Okay.
couldn't drive with the windows open.
I guess maybe outside. Maybe it's outside. Okay, could be. I'm not going to deny it. Bottom line is, that was a different kind of smell.
Okay.
Okay? So
That's
all the
Makame
point of
smell?
these, there are a couple of people who have professions. A few people have professions that were non-invited, right? Tanners and so
Tanners, I
forth.
would think, yeah.
Because if they would come, everybody else would not come, or people would stay away. So therefore, these people have to stay away in order that Kol Zechurcha can come.
Right.
That's what this means. You can't set up a system that people will stay away because the conditions are poor. So the Tanya Chem Omrim, the following people: Hamakametz. Makametz is the guy that collects the dog feces. V'Hamitzaref Nechoshes. Mitzaref Nechoshes was a person who refined copper. Now, I don't know why, maybe the sulfur came off copper, whatever the impurities were. This was also a smell that was probably very obnoxious, and because he was smelting it, I guess it's like any kind of smelting process. All the different impurities are going to burn off or be pulled off, and it stuck to him after a while. Borsi is the tanner. Peturim and Ariya are exempt from the mitzvah of Riyah. Shnemar Kol Zechuracha. Because all the Israelites or all the males have to be together. Kol Zechurcha means they all have to be seen as one multitude. And if this guy were to come, everybody would move away. It's got to be a person who can stand with everyone else. Hard to imagine how these people lived and what they did and how they fit into society. But I guess a job's a job. I guess,
So they brought two corbans and not that one? Is that what you're saying?
So this guy doesn't know he didn't come up to the Beis Mikdash at all.
No, but he had to
They were persona non gratis.
He had to bring a korban, didn't he?
Only have to bring a korban if you go to Beis Mikdash.
Really?
Yeah.
And it sounds like he's exempt.
Why can't he have a shaliach just for the other two?
Well, I guess he could, but I don't know.
He's not. Why he's not?
But he couldn't go up. In other words, but the Kol Zechurcha says he couldn't go to Beis Mikdash. I guess he got someone bring the korbanos for him.
So somebody else brings it, and then he eats it out there somewhere.
Fine, okay.
That's why he lives in society.
Well,
Okay.
absolutely.
Good,
Otherwise,
fine.
the guy's ostracized.
I mean, the drash is an unusual drash. You could argue the drash is the other way around. You could have said Kol Zechurcha says I have to include all Zechurcha, including this guy. You guys, everybody else has got to find a way to make it work for him, because everybody's included,
Right.
and if he can't come, then he's excluded.
That makes more sense according to the pshat of the pshat pasuk.
Right. But that's clearly not what Acherim says. And
Whoever these Acherim are. I mean,
Who is this?
who are these guys?
I don't know what Acherim is.
They're part of that group that doesn't want to come. Why did we get out of it? Listen, it's okay. It works for them.
Okay.
So this is a separate prices that was brought down.
So therefore, there's a standalone brisa that Acherim says that and this is what the earlier brisa that we brought in the name of Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says, the nirin chatzayim.
That's what it means.
What that means the same thing.
Right.
We are trying. The Gemara is
Yeah.
trying to say that this brisa and that brisa are saying the same thing in different words.
Right, sure.
The same way the brisa says the guy who collects the dog manure can't be there. So when it says Einir and Chatzai means the same thing. You all got to be hanging together. You cannot appear to be parts of groups and groups and groups and groups.
Right.
Now, once again, I said the same thing. You could argue the other way around. You could say, therefore, the dog manure collector needed to be here, because otherwise, if everybody's there except all the dog manure collectors, it's really not everybody. So it's not true. So the drash seems to be the other way around. So that helps us. That's the sidebar after everything. This brisa that was brought down, which, by the way, it was brought down and it didn't really have an effect because the question and answer got knocked off.
Right.
But to understand the line, it's a difficult line. What it means, Ein Ner Chatzam, the kind of Gemara goes back and explains that there. Okay, that takes us pretty much up to the Mishnah.
New Mishnah.
And Mishnah.
A few minutes to read the Mishnah, please.
We can start the Mishnah, okay? So this Mishnah is a little confusing because the Mishnah kind of talks different karbanos, and each line of Mishnah deals with a different sacrifice. So you gotta know which sacrifice was being mentioned each line. Okay, Olos b'moed. So Olos is going to be referring to Olas Riyah. And the Gemara is actually going to explain that may refer to other korbanos as well.
Other olos, right?
Right, but the topic of Masechet Chagiga deals with these three korbanos: Olas Riyah, Shalmei Chagiga, and Shalmei Simcha.
Right.
So the first line of the Mishnah says, Olos b'moed bos menachulin. When you bring a korban Olas Riyah, on Chalamoed, Bamoed means Chalamoed, not Yontif. You have to bring it from not sanctified material, so it can't come from Ma'aser Sheni. It has to come from Chulin. And the Gemara is going to talk about what about if you bring on Yontif. This only seems to talk about Chalamoed. Olos Bamoed. Which
really, as we learned from just previously, is optional according to Rabbi Yochanan.
Right.
Optional.
To bring it on Chalamoid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, correct.
Right.
But actually, what it really means is, or you didn't get a chance to bring it on the first day Yontif. Okay. In other words, it's not a multiple carbon. This, if you didn't bring it on Yontif, you bring it on Chalamoid.
Are you obligated to bring out Chalamoid if you missed it on Yontif? Like you were sick or something?
If you're, are you obligated? Yes, you would be. Yeah, yes, yeah.
So the implication, even without going further,
it's very possible. I mean, for example, let me ask you a question. It's a little different. What happens if you didn't say Hallel on the first 2 days of Yontif? No, do we make a Shechiana? No. What happens if you didn't take an esrog on the first day of Sukkot? You took it the second day of Sukkot. Would you make a bracha? Shechiana? I believe so.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are make-up things you do if you couldn't do it the first day.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because if it's a case of where you did give it on the first day, then I would assume it would be much more lenient on Cholamoid because you don't really have to bring this korban.
But it's not. But it's dealing with this is the first time you're bringing the korban. Okay, the Mishnah is a complicated Mishnah. Let's try to make it more complicated. Okay.
But does it imply though, because it says during Cholamoid, does it imply that for the first day, if you brought it, it could be from Kedoshim, not
right?
From
That's the Gemara is going to ask the question. The Gemara is going to say no. Okay, but it looks like it says that if you bring a korban olas riyah on Chalamoed, you have to bring it from Chulin, and you cannot bring it from Ma'aser Sheni, right? And the reason is because it's an obligatory sacrifice, something that's sanctified already. You can't bring an obligatory sacrifice that from something that's already sanctified. You're sanctifying it now. So the question the Gemara is going to ask, which we're not going to do today, which the first piece of Gemara is, what about Yontif? And the answer is going to be there is no difference. Okay. The next line in the Mishnah, okay, V'shalmei V'shlamim min ha'maiser. Okay, and if you want to bring Shalmei Simcha, this Shlamim here is a Shalmei Simcha.
Not the Chagiga.
Not the Chagiga. You can bring this from Maiser, because we told you that last time Shlamim is not a sacrifice that you have to bring. Shalmei Simcha is something you don't have to bring. Right. So therefore, if I already am bringing, let's say, a korban for Ma'aser Sheni, or a different korban, I can make that also my Shalmei Simcha. So I can bring it from anything I want, even from Maiser. And I could bring my Ma'aser Sheni money to Yerushalayim, and with the Ma'aser Sheni money buy the animal and bring it as a Shalmei Simcha. Okay. Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach, the first day of Pesach, and the Gemara is going to say, by the way, this refers to any Yontif. You probably want to know why the first day of Pesach and not the first day of Shavuos. I'll try to tell you. Beis Shammai Omrim min ha'chulin, ubeis Hillel Omrim min ha'maiser. This refers to Shalmei Chagiga. I see how confusing the mission is. It started with Olas Riyah. The next line which talks about Maiser is Shalmei Simcha, and this is talking about Shalmei Chagiga. That the Shalmei Chagiga that I bring on the first day of Yontif, it's a machlokas whether it has to come from Chulin because it's a chova, and Beis Hillel says I can bring it even from the Maiser. The Gemara is going to explain that it doesn't really mean I can only bring it from Maiser. It means I can bring it from a combination of Maiser and Chulin. So I could do a 50-50 split. I could either bring a small animal or bring a bigger animal and combine the money. Okay, that's going to be a complicated discussion in the Gemara. Okay, why does it say the first day of Pesach? So the Gemara in a sidebar is going to talk about the fact that this is the Shalmei Chagiga. There's another korban Chagiga that was brought on Pesach that you actually recognize, which was brought on the night of Pesach. right? We have the two things on the Seder plate. You have the Zroa and the Be'ah, and they tell you the BAYT is really for the Korban Chagiga. That Korban Chagiga is not the Korban Chagiga that we've been talking about all along. There was a separate Korban Chagiga that they brought the night of Pesach, in order that when they ate the Korban Pesach, they were already satisfied. Okay, so that threw you for a loop, right? So they're actually
two chagigas.
Two chagigos, or a special chagiga for the Korban Pesach, which was brought the night of Pesach. The special Korban Pesach is a special Korban, and it has special Korban chagiga that went with it before. Okay, so therefore, when the Mishnah says Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach, not to exclude the first day of Sukkot, but to exclude the night of Pesach, which is different. It's a whole different set of rules.